I only met my grandfather one time. I met him when I was 15 years old, ironically, at my grandmother's funeral. I didn't know what he looked like. I had only seen photos of him. My mother had a frame of her mother and her father that she kept in a suitcase. My mother never talked about him, ever. Like, I always asked, because I was like, wait, hold on, everybody got two grandfathers. Where's this grandfather, right? And my mother would never talk to him. My mother was raised by her grandmother and her uncle. So I remember the first time I met my grandfather. And so it was at my grandmother's funeral. I remember the funeral. I remember we had a lot of family. I had heard here and there from my, family or my tias, that apparently he was a handsome man and he was from Guadalajara and that he lived in the Heights and drove a big red Cadillac. He was always dressed nice in suits and that he played the guitar in the North Side bars on the weekends and stuff. I never knew him, so at 15 years I had this image of this great man, right? Oh, my grandfather is a titan. He lives in the Heights, drives a big red Cadillac. In the funeral, quite honestly, I didn't expect to see him there. One of my cousins nudged me and says, "Hey, your grandfather's here." And I was like, "Who?" Because I was thinking my grandfather from my father's side, and I was like, "Where?" I'm looking back, and so then he pointed at him, and I was kind of shocked because everybody knew this guy. Like my aunts, my uncles. I think my father was there. My father knew him. Everybody knew this guy. And I'm like, wait, hold on. How does everybody know this guy? And I've only seen him once in a picture, And he was making his rounds like a movie star, So anyways, he ended up, up to where my mother was at, and my mother didn't even acknowledge him. But when he got close enough to her, she looked at him and he hugged her, and she kind of did that weird, I don't know what you call that. So I remember I went up to her because I went closer because I wanted to meet him. I'll never forget that my mother, she didn't say, "Hey, this is your grandfather." She grabbed me, pulled me close, and said, "This is my son." This speaks to the volumes as to how my mother felt about this man. And I remember he shook my hand with two hands, which was really strange to me. He didn't say anything. He just shook my hand. And I remember he kept on talking to my mother and other family members. So I remember sitting down and staring at him, and I was looking at him. I was trying to find a connection, right? Like, does he look like me? Does he look like my mom? Does he look like this? Who is this guy, right? And there was nothing there. I had no connection to this person. When we went to the funeral or to the cemetery to bury my grandmother, I remember that he asked for us to ride in the car with him. He had a burgundy Buick. It wasn't a Cadillac. And I remember we rode down there, and I was in the back seat, and he turned to me and he gave me a $10 bill, and he told me in Spanish, "It's not much, but believe me, it's from the bottom of my heart." And I was like, okay. Remember, I'm 15, right? You're already turning into a man. You kind of, you're starting to see things differently, right? But I remember I put those $10 in my pocket. I held on to them. I didn't really get to speak to him after that. I just know he disappeared, and I ended up, somewhere else at my aunt's house. And I never saw him again. But I remember that I held on to those $10 for a long time. I had my little shrine, on top of my thing. You have tickets tickets when I went to go see Selena at the Astroworld concert. I had different things that were given to me, keepsakes, right? And I remember I put my $10 there. And then one day I remember seeing the $10 and I said, why am I holding on to this $10, right? I guess I always felt like that $10 was keeping a connection between us. And I think I felt like after he met me, he would see how awesome I was and how awesome my mom was, and he would rekindle a relationship, and it never happened. So I remember one day on my way out, I grabbed the $10 and I went to Flamingos on Airline and Parker, and I bought myself a pina colada raspa with condensed milk. And that's the last I ever thought of him until he passed away. and we only found out he was he was dead 2 years after he was dead. So that's my story. My grandfather I saw once, and the $10 that he gave me that I reinvested into my community.